Alright, welcome to my 1000 kilometers an hour review of Hades, spoiler free and as quickly as possible. Okay, so let's get to it. What is Hades? Hades is a roguelike action hack and slash game where you go from stage to stage, fighting through enemies and trying to accomplish your goal at the end. No spoilers, of course. The runs are instance based and there is some degree of variety to each run. There is a lot of activity around your character as well, outside of fighting. You have relationships with NPCs, you have codex to explore, the world to explore, cosmetic upgrades to your home base, and of course NPC storylines to unlock through dialogue. There also are permanent upgrades that you can make to your character that will help you in your killing. So, what does Hades do well? Hades does its action really well. It's smooth, it's responsive, it's really good for speedrunners and people that like to run the game over and over and really master it because it's very consistent and there are no technical issues with the fighting itself. It's very crisp and clean. The visuals are great, very nice colors, very artistic design of characters, very unique design of characters, very memorable. Each of them have a visual personality. The sound is also amazing. The original soundtrack is absolutely amazing in the game. The sound effects are great and responsive as well. The voice acting is top-notch. Hades also has a great, or decent, I should say, story. There is a main story and there is some individual story tied to each of the NPCs as well. And Hades does a very good job of stretching the story out and have you be invested in figuring out what has happened to each character and whatnot. But the most important thing that Hades does well, in my opinion, is the death mechanic in the game. Hades has done a very good job of making deaths less painful. Because every time you die, you go back and you get to explore more of the story and the world that you're in. So, at least in the first 20 to 30 hours of the game, dying isn't really that big a deal. It isn't until later when you start bumping up the difficulty and actually succeeding in your goal that death becomes more of a punishment, which is fine. But in the early stages of the game, death is just part of the experience of learning about the world, and that is actually very brilliantly done. Now, what does Hades do poorly? The story is very fragmented. You won't get a cohesive run through the story. There's always some RNG gating you from proceeding. And to some people, this can be really annoying because it creates very uneven pacing in the storytelling. What Hades lacks compared to some other roguelike games is that there is a little bit too much repetitiveness in the enemies and the stages. It's very predictable what's going to happen after a certain while, unlike other roguelike games where the stages branches into different biomes and whatnot. And this is something I feel like they could have done better. Okay, so who is gonna like Hades? I think pretty much everyone is gonna enjoy Hades at some level. It's a very well-made game, very well-rounded. It has great action, has a bunch of things to do and explore. It has great sound and story and everything. I've already mentioned all of this. And the game is challenging, but not too punishing. It's not the hardest roguelike game to get into. That's not to say that Hades at its most difficult isn't hard. It is. But getting into it is actually not that hard. So I think almost everybody will find something they enjoy within the Hades world and, well, within the Hades game itself. So who will not like Hades? I don't think... There's probably a niche group of players that hate this type of game, and those people will already know whether or not they like Hades based on what they've seen so far. But beyond that, I think most people will get some enjoyment out of it. So I don't necessarily think the question is, will you or will you not like Hades? I think the question is, how long will it take before Hades becomes too repetitive and too boring for you? Because of the negative things I mentioned earlier, there is... how well you deal with those negative aspects defines how quickly you will get bored of the game, whether it be after 20, 50, 100, 500 hours, 1,000 hours, who knows. The fact that the story is fragmented and uneven, the fact that there is some RNG grind, and the fact that the biomes and the repetitive fighting doesn't really change could put a damper on your enjoyment of the game after 50 hours. But to be honest, that is fine. 50 hours of enjoyment at the minimum is really good, especially for a game as small as Hades. So just, you know, take a look at yourself, your gaming history, and go back to the part where I talk about what's bad about the game and ask yourself, how quickly will you start disliking these elements? And that's really gonna tell you a lot about how much enjoyment you're gonna get out of the game. But overall, I think that most people will find a good deal of entertainment from this game, and they'll like parts of it at the bare minimum, and that's gonna probably get you several good hours of gameplay. So if you get a chance to buy it, especially if you get it on sale. That's my recommendation. So yeah, generally, good game, and if they release Hades 2, I'm gonna buy it. Okay, bye.